If you also get frustrated with the advice, just pick yourself up by your own bootstraps. That phrase has flip-flopped to mean almost the exact opposite today of what it originally meant. It started off as a joke. It was a physics joke that meant impossible. 1830s, what happened was, there was a pseudoscientist named Nimrod Murphy who claimed he could do the impossible. He claimed he created perpetual motion, which was a ridiculous lie. He would have to break multiple laws of physics to get that to happen. It was such a silly lie that newspapers printed articles teasing him, lacing into him. One person said, if Nimrod Murphy could create perpetual motion, then he could also pick himself up by his own bootstraps and toss himself over a fence. Very funny in the 1830s. So originally to say, oh, you'd have to pick yourself up by your bootstraps, or, oh yeah, and I'll just pick myself up by my bootstraps then, would have meant that's impossible. That's laughably ridiculous. But as we broke the expression in, it stretched out to mean someone who really did achieve this seemingly impossible almost entirely on their own. By the turn of the 1900s, to say, oh wow, they really picked themselves up by their bootstraps, or they're a real bootstrapper, would have been a compliment. Until late 1920s, when the phrase gets tied to U.S. business culture. The British Sunday Times printed an article where they used the word bootstrapper as an insult, as an admonishment against U.S. business culture. They warned that if all these up-and-coming U.S. bootstrappers really believed they could build absolutely anything entirely out of nothing, only on their own, all they were really going to build themselves was a lot of disappointment. Now, of course, we in the States did not take that as a warning so much as we took it as a challenge. Businessmen love the idea of being a bootstrapper. They embraced it. You can do it. Just pick yourself up by your own bootstraps. You got this. And during the stock market bubble of the roaring 1920s, it might be easy to imagine how all of these successful, rich, powerful men genuinely believed they could build absolutely anything entirely on their own. So much so that when the stock market crashed, rugged individualism or bootstrap capitalism largely remained the policy of the Hoover administration. So bootstrapping was no longer the exception, it was the expectation. It meant self-sufficiency, it meant independence, it meant freedom, it meant patriotism. Now that sentiment became especially strong among certain crowds, 1950s, 1960s, civil rights movement, when there is a push to end systematic racism, segregation, disenfranchisement of Black Americans. White politicians opposed to equality would perhaps make the argument that a real patriot, independent of their race, is a bootstrapper. A real patriot would not want the government to get involved in any of that. They would be individual, they would be self-sufficient, they would pick themselves up by their own bootstraps. Never mind that Black Americans had been systematically deprived these magical, metaphorical boots. It was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. who said, "It is a cruel jest to suggest to a bootless man that he pick himself up by his own bootstraps." Now, of course, the phrase continues to develop even 200 years after Nimrod Murphy put it into perpetual motion, and it might mean different things to different people. I personally have a habit of taking things very literally, which is partly why I love puns so much. So while I try not to judge, when I hear someone in designer shoes give the advice, oh, just pick yourself up by your bootstraps, I can't help but think that person's acting a little bit like a heel.